People hate you for being different or for thinking differently. Something I've come to learn throughout my life is that if you're not a normal person with normal interests that talks about normal things, then most people will not like you. Once people realize you're different, they will not want to be around you. And usually they'll let you know. They will make no mistake about it. And this is something I've had confirmed to myself time and time again, pretty much any time I've ever managed to open up to someone, which is rare, but that's what happened the other day. I tried to reach out to this guy I used to work with, Jamal. I'll talk about that in a minute. But when you are a man that prefers to talk about deeper topics, maybe certain philosophical topics, or really just anything that most people don't think about, people just really don't like that. I don't know if it just makes people uncomfortable to think about those things or what, but most people just want to talk about the same things, like football, or they'll want to talk about popular TV shows, or maybe some trending topic, or something that's going on in current events. And that's fine to an extent. I can listen to people talk about things like that for a bit. I don't mind pretending to be a normie for a couple of minutes. Obviously, not every conversation needs to be a deep philosophical discussion, but anytime the ball's in my court and I need to say something to progress the conversation, or especially anytime someone asks me about myself, they ask about my hobbies or my interests, that's when things start to fall apart. That's when things get bad. What got me thinking about this topic is my recent interaction with an acquaintance of mine. I'll call him Jamal. That's not his real name, but y'all probably wouldn't believe me if I told you his real name. Anyways, he's the closest thing I've had to a friend in a long time, like since back in high school. But the last time we hung out was back in December, I think, and we haven't really talked at all since then. So I thought, I probably should text him just because any time so far that we did hang out, it was always because he invited me. So maybe he thinks I don't want to be friends with him because I haven't reached out to him, which makes enough sense. I would probably feel that way if I had a friend that never talked to me unless I messaged them first. So I figured I'd shoot him a text message, just a quick, "Hey, what's up, man? How you been?" So that's what I did. I texted exactly that. "Hey, what's up, man? How you been?" And then the worst possible thing that could possibly happen happened. Literally my nightmare scenario. My phone started ringing. I guess he was driving, so he didn't want to text while he was driving, so he just immediately called me, which you might be thinking, okay, so what? Big deal. And sure, it's not a big deal, but I was not ready for a vocal conversation. I texted, so I expected a text in return. And just the way I am, I think it's mostly just a part of my social anxiety, but I really struggle to make regular conversation. I can do okay if I'm prepared. If I know the situation I'm getting myself into and I'm ready for it, then it's still not easy, but that's one thing. But especially on the phone, it's extra hard for me because I can't use context clues from body language. And this was a surprise phone call. I was not expecting it, so I was caught off guard. But I mean, you can't not answer in that situation. He called me literally right after I sent the text. He knows my phone was in my hand. So, yeah, Jamal called me and I answered. We actually had a pretty good conversation at first. He was asking me if I knew any good games he should buy. So I recommended Space Marine 2 because I know he likes Call of Duty and Gears of War. So I figured he might like Space Marine. But then that's when things got awkward. He asked me about what's the reason I texted him. So, like I already said, I was just texting him to try to keep in touch because I felt like the ball is in my court at this point. But on the spot, when he asked that, I just couldn't think of a good way to phrase it. So I said something like, oh, I just wanted to talk to you, which, he probably thinks I'm gay now, because then he was like, all right, what you want to talk about? And I think I said, nothing in particular. So, imagine your guy friend calls you up and you ask him, what is the reason for this call? And he says something like, I just wanted to hear your voice. You, you know, that's how gay I probably sounded. I might as well have said that. Like, it's making me cringe right now just thinking about it. Oh, I just wanted to talk to you. Not about anything in particular. I just wanted to chat. Just wanted to talk to you. But whatever. In my defense, I'm not the one that called. I just texted him. But whatever. That part wasn't actually that big a deal. He didn't even act like that was a weird thing to say, so I'm probably just overthinking it. So he started telling me about this girl he was dating for a few weeks. I don't know how he met her, but he said everything was going great. He even met her parents, and he said they liked him. He got along well with her whole family. I guess he met her siblings and everything too. So that makes it sound like it was getting serious, right? Well, he said one night they were supposed to meet up for dinner. So he went to the restaurant, and he said she didn't respond when he said he was on his way, but he just figured she was driving or something. But then he gets to the restaurant and he calls her and she didn't answer. So he kept trying to text her and call her and she just wasn't responding. And yeah, she just ghosted him. She stood him up and she literally never responded to him ever again after that. So he said he checked her Instagram while he was still at the restaurant. He checked her Instagram and he saw that she had deleted all the pictures with him on there. And then he found out a few days later, apparently she's dating some other guy now that I guess used to be in the NFL. I don't know if that means he's retired or if he just wasn't good enough anymore. But Jamal was saying that the guy's rich. I didn't ask what his name was or anything, so I don't know. But here's where I fucked up. Okay, imagine you're talking to your friend on the phone and he tells you this story about his girlfriend dumping him for some ex NFL player. What would your response be? Most normal people would probably just say, damn, that sucks, or something like that, right? But I'm not a normal person. So what I said was, that's hypergamy for you, which is obviously retarded. Jamal is not terminally online like I am. So, of course, he doesn't know words like hypergamy. So he was just like, what? So I said, hypergamy. It just means that women will always seek to date the man with the highest SMV that they can. And I said it just like that, or, pretty much that's what I said. That might not be the exact wording I used, but I know I mentioned SMV. So when I said that, he literally just said, he was quiet for a second, and then he just said, what? Because this is how freaking horrible my social skills are. I do think it was partly because I was put on the spot, because I wasn't expecting him to call me like that. But obviously, Jamal does not know terminally online manosphere terminology like hypergamy and SMV. The most he does on the internet is watch music videos and look at Instagram. He's not browsing forums and he's not listening to B-pill doomer content on YouTube. I probably sounded like I was speaking a different language to him. I mean, I probably could have said basically the exact same thing I did say, but just worded it in layman's terms instead of using this esoteric internet speak, and he probably would have agreed with me. I should have just said, like, damn, bro, these hoes just don't know when they got a good thing. If I had just said that, he probably would have just been like, yeah, I bet. And everything would be good. And he would still think I'm a normal person. But instead, my terminally online, under socialized brain can only operate in extreme autism mode. Like, I just can't switch it off and act like a regular person for 5 goddamn minutes. So, I end up revealing my true nature as a fucking autistic chud. So, yeah, I said whatever I said about hypergamy and how hypergamy describes how women tend to seek out the man with the highest SMV. And Jamal just said, "What?" So at that point, I could tell I was screwing up this whole interaction. So I just said, never mind. It's not important. And he reacted like, basically, he was like, "Bro, this is your problem. This is why you can't get laid. You can't be talking like a scientist all the time." He said something like that. And I was just like, "Yeah, you're probably right." So then I was like, "Well, that sucks about your girl. Sounds like you dodged a bullet," which is what I should have said from the start. And he just said, "Yeah," or something. I don't really remember. But right after that, he was just like, "All right, man, I actually got to get going." And that was the end of the conversation. That was it. I don't know if it's possible to fully grasp exactly how it was just from hearing me tell you about it. And I don't think this is like a friendship ruined moment or anything like that. But it was just another reminder that I do need to essentially play a character when I talk to people in real life, unless I want everyone to think I'm a freak. This interaction isn't the best example of what I wanted to talk about today because honestly, he's right to respond negatively when I use words like hypergamy and SMV in everyday conversation. So that's on me. But what I really want to talk about is how the vast majority of people on this planet are just super resistant to talking about anything that is not surface level. You say anything that goes against the norm, even a little bit, and people start to get really uncomfortable. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. Back when I was in college, I was in calculus class, and there was a guy I knew from high school in there. We weren't friends or anything. In fact, I don't know if we ever even talked at all before that class. I never really talked to anybody in my high school for the most part, but we did at least know each other. We knew who each other were. And I wasn't a typical student in the sense that I was a little bit older than most college students. I didn't get my bachelor's degree till I was 26, I think. So me and this guy were both older than most of the other people in the class, and we kind of knew each other. So he would talk to me sometimes before class, just regular small talk. I usually wouldn't say much, but after weeks of making small talk with this guy for 5 to 10 minutes before class, 3 times a week, every week, it kind of felt like we were bonding. And we both knew each other from the same small town and everything. In more ways than one, we were both kind of the odd man out in that class. So eventually, I started to feel more comfortable around him, and I think it was probably the same for him, although he was already a more social person than I am from the start. But yeah, I started to get more comfortable with this guy, and I remember one day before class, we were making small talk like usual. So, well, the night before that, I had watched a video explaining the fourth dimension, and then I started reading all about the fourth dimension, which at the time I thought was really interesting. I don't remember anything about it now, but I figured, we were in calculus class, which is at least tangentially related to the idea of the fourth dimension. I mean, calculus, physics, and geometry are all related. And my acquaintance was in the same engineering major I was, so I knew that he was also taking physics. So I don't know. I figured that might be a topic he would find interesting too. So we were making small talk. There was a lull in the conversation, and I asked him, "Have you ever read about the fourth dimension?" And I'll never forget this because it really surprised me at the time. But he just got this look on his face like I had just asked the most retarded question of all time. And he goes, "Why the fuck would I do that?" Like, I don't know if he intended to be mean about it, but the way he said it, it was like I'm an absolute moron for bringing up the fourth dimension as a conversation piece. Like that's the stupidest thing in the world. It was like he was offended that I would think he might be interested in a topic like that. Which, even today, I don't think it's that out there of a thing to talk about. I'm pretty sure there's plenty of normies that would at least be kind of curious about it. Like, oh, the fourth dimension? It's interesting to think about. Like, what even is the fourth dimension? Is it time? Is it something else? What is it? I think it's something that just hearing about it, for me at least, it invokes curiosity. It makes me wonder, what is that? But this guy just immediately, why the fuck would I do that? And he kept going. He was like, I'm just trying to get through this degree and get a job already. I don't give a shit about any of this math shit. This was over 10 years ago, by the way, so I don't actually remember word for word what he said other than the whole, why the fuck would I do that? Because he definitely said that. He said exactly that. But, it felt like he just wanted to make sure that I knew for sure not to ever mistake him for a person with a semblance of curiosity ever again. I don't know if he just really didn't want anybody to think he's a nerd or what. I don't know what the deal was. But that's the kind of thing that always seems to happen anytime I've ever tried to talk about anything a little bit thought provoking. And it was embarrassing too, because other people in the class saw this happening. They saw this guy just dismissing me like I'm some kind of idiot. And by the way, I just didn't even respond. I literally didn't even say anything. I didn't know what to say. And he just turned around after that, after his little rant was over. And I'm pretty sure the teacher walked in almost right after that too. So I don't know. It felt really shitty getting talked to like that when I thought I was bonding with this guy. I thought maybe we're starting to become friends. He did still make small talk with me every now and then after that, but I just always let him pick the topic. I did not try to bring up any topics of discussion after that. Because I mean, that reaction, I'll never forget that. He made me feel like I'm like such a massive weirdo for even daring to bring up something that I thought was interesting. But like I say, I've experienced interactions similar to that several times throughout my life, to the point that by now I know it's never a good idea to try to go beyond the standard safe topics with most people. You can talk about the weather, you can talk about sports, as long as it's football, basketball, or maybe baseball where I live. You can talk about politics as long as you agree with the person you're talking to, which is usually easy to guess just based on the person's age and how they dress and everything. And you can talk about popular TV shows or video games, maybe. But if you want to talk about, I don't know, philosophy, if you want to talk about conspiracy theories, and I'm not even talking about trying to talk about conspiracy theories where you're actually trying to convince someone of anything, but I just find conspiracy theories interesting sometimes. And I mostly just really like digging into the low stakes kind of conspiracies that wouldn't even matter that much if they were true. Like the theory that Fidel Castro is the father of Justin Trudeau, or the theory that Princess Diana cheated on the current king, I guess. I can't even think of his name right now. But the theory is that Prince Harry's real father was Princess Diana's horse riding instructor. Like shit like that, I think would be fun to talk about. It's not even that serious. But as soon as people find out you've ever even entertained such things, people just get really uncomfortable. And that's another thing too. Most people, it's like, if you even mention something just to talk about it, people always jump to assuming that there's a reason you want to talk about that topic outside of it just being something you found interesting. This happens all the time with my mom, where I'll just be trying to make conversation about something I heard that I thought was interesting, and she just cannot comprehend that that's all there is to it. It's just something I thought was interesting. So, for example, I remember a few years ago, I read an article about a local community college that had a auto mechanic program, and the article said something like, over the past however many years, They've had 100% job placement for their graduates. As in, the way it was written, it sounded like they're saying that literally 100% of the people that have gone through their program ended up working as a mechanic. And maybe that's not really that surprising. I don't know. But I thought it was interesting. You know, like not even one guy wasn't able to find a job. Literally every single person that gets that certification at this school goes on to be employed in the field. I mean, it is kind of hard to believe, but I don't know. They probably were bullshitting somehow, anyways. But, anyways, I just mentioned that to my mom just to make conversation, just because I thought it was interesting and I was bored. So I'm just making conversation. And this was while I was working on my master's degree, by the way. But I just mentioned that, like, hey, mom, I read an article that said that at blah, blah, blah college, that literally 100% of their auto mechanic students end up working as auto mechanics. That's all I said, you know, just sharing a little tidbit that I found interesting. But she couldn't comprehend that it's not some coded message I'm trying to send her. She was like, why would you even think about being a mechanic? You're smarter than that. You think you're just going to drop out of school now and be a mechanic? You're almost done. And I was just like, Mom, chill. I just thought it was interesting. I'm not trying to tell you anything deeper than that. It's just something I thought was interesting. Because, yeah, the other thing I forgot to mention was the article was from a big publication, like something along the lines of the New York Times or the Washington Post, something like that. I forget exactly what it was. It might have been the New York Times, come to think of it, but I can't remember exactly. But either way, it was an article in a major publication, but it was focused on a program at the local community college in my hometown, which is just a small city in the South that most of you have probably never even heard of. The article was about trade schools in general, but for whatever reason, they chose to profile the local community college here in my area. So that's also what I found interesting about it. And that's what I started with, if I recall correctly, when I told my mom about it. I'm pretty sure I said something like, hey, there was an article in the New York Times about blah, blah, blah college. And then I told her about the 100% job placement thing. And maybe my mom is particularly bad about making assumptions, but that's something I've noticed with a lot of people I've met. People just make weird assumptions about whatever it is you choose to talk about. Nobody ever thinks maybe you just randomly thought something was interesting, so you decided to share it just because it was interesting. People always assume that you have some ulterior motives behind whatever you're saying. Unless it's sports or the weather or one of the other approved topics like that. If you're talking about college football, then yeah, everyone can understand you're just making conversation. But as soon as you bring up anything that's a little bit outside the box, or not even outside the box, it doesn't have to be anything weird, like with the auto mechanic thing, that is a normie topic. It's not a weird thing to talk about. But if you try to mention something about some specific thing like that, then people just automatically start making assumptions about why you want to talk about that. And the assumption they're making, in my experience, is never accurate. The assumption they're making is never just, well, maybe he just found it interesting. They always think there's some deeper reason, like you're trying to tell them something with what you're saying. Like when I asked the guy in my class about the fourth dimension, who knows what kind of assumptions he was making about why I wanted to talk about the fourth dimension? I really don't know. But with the way he reacted, he must have been assuming something because he acted like it was just such a stupid question. And it sucks because I think that was a really interesting topic that could have led to a really interesting discussion where maybe we both end up learning something. Or through our discussion, maybe he says something that makes me think of things in a different way. Or maybe something I say gives him an idea that he wouldn't have had otherwise. I think certain topics, like philosophical topics or just any kind of more mentally engaging types of topics, that sort of conversation could be beneficial, I think, for everybody that's involved. You might get to exercise your mind a little bit without it being really mentally taxing because you're still just having a conversation. So it still is a leisurely activity, but you're still engaging your mind when you talk about something more interesting like that. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just not a normal person. But in my experience, it's really rare to meet a person that is willing to engage in any kind of sort of deep conversation. Obviously, there are people that enjoy talking about things like that, but I haven't met them. And maybe my problem is I just never managed to get close enough to someone to where they'd feel comfortable having a deep conversation with me. Maybe it's just a matter of me trying to go too deep too early. I don't know. It feels like most people are pretty similar to each other, and I'm not. I'm different. And people pick up on that when they talk to me, and people don't like that about me. They don't like that at all. In fact, I think a lot of people hate that. I think a lot of people hate it when you think differently, when you think outside the box. It sucks. It really sucks. If you made it this far, first of all, thank you. Sincerely, I appreciate it. As much as it sucks to not have anyone in my real life that relates to me, it is comforting to know there are people that actually care what I have to say. So, thanks. If you're new here, please consider watching some of my other videos or just listen with the screen in the background. There's also some secret videos you can watch for free on my Patreon. No sign up required, so check that out. And I'll see you next time.